Hey MAGA, how many of you believe that Trump is doing an awesome job? How many of you believe he's going to save our economy? Democrats, how many of you believe that Trump is doing a horrible job? How many of you believe or blame each other, political parties? Listen, guys, what I'm going to tell you today, without a doubt, if you pay attention, will change your perception and you will know who to blame. Okay? And it's not getting any better, no matter who's in power. Okay? But yes, things has gotten a lot worse. And a lot of you don't understand what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the nation. So therefore, you will come and you blame others, and you have at each other's throat with not knowing what's going on. And I'm going to begin real quickly, because if not, I'll start stuttering, and I don't want to do that. If you look right here, this sheet, and I'm going to put it up here, has to do with the decline of the dollar's buying power since 1913 to 2025. Please note, this was done in 2025, so it's actually gotten a little worse, but since then we lost 97% of our buying power. So this didn't start with Trump, and didn't start with Biden. It started way back since 1913, when a banking cartel of few families, Rothschild, JP Morgan, Vanguard, a few Zionist and European families got together and created unconstitutionally what you know today as the Federal Reserve System. If you don't know what it is, watch this video up here where I explain the details how I started, going way back to before Napoleon and all that. Okay? So let's continue. As you saw, 97% of our buying power. So are things getting any better for you, the American people? Absolutely not. I must add that at the same time, the Federal Reserve was created, taxing you on money for the debt that you have, because a lot of you don't understand debt and you think it's a government entity and they could just keep printing debt. Now, if you look here, second one, medium household income versus the cash people get paid, notice the gap. Notice, and I only did it from 1950. I didn't want to go back to 1913. But if you notice, I don't care if your income has gone up slightly higher. You can see that the amount of what the house costs because of inflation is that much, the gap is that much more. So, like I said in another video, even if you think that your minimum wage, because you see it keeps going up slightly, right? Yet, you got to understand, like, for example, food might have gone 28%. Light, utility, power has gone up, fuel. So when you take all that into account, you got to look at what is called your buying power, your purchasing power. And obviously with inflation, that has to decline. So it's not getting any better. It's getting a lot worse for you to qualify for a home. This is a fact. And by the way, I'm a licensed real estate broker. I also major in real estate as well as an accountant. Okay. And this is macroeconomics that we're going to be speaking shortly after this. So look at also CEO. Average worker pay since 1913 to 2025. Also look at the gap. Okay. Again, I'm going to be putting it up here. You see how drastic it is, that gap from what a CEO used to get paid and now how much more they get paid, which means you get paid that much less. You're eating the crumbs that fall off your master's table. Now, I want you to stay with me, because I'm going to show you how our economy is a lot worse than you think, and why I believe there's going to be a major war, because there is 2 or even 3 superpowers fighting for the valuation of the dollar, and the dollar's crashing. The dollar is depleting. The dollar's losing its control, and the people that own the dollar, that control the dollar, not America, no, the banking cartel that control the dollar, that the whole world pegged the dollar with, right, since 1944, okay? And remember that since then, the dollar used to be backed by gold. $1 or $35 used to buy you an ounce of gold until 1971. In 1971, the United States couldn't keep up with the gold bars and the amount of inflation. It was becoming very costly. So they took off the dollar of the gold standard, the Bretton Woods system. Okay? So when the country started seeing that, they started dropping the dollar, and dollars worth by inflation. Okay? So we strategically got together with OPEC, Saudi Arabia, and created what is called the petrodollar. What is the petrodollar? The petrodollar was a coercion, almost see it as a monopoly, where we coerce all the nations that if they wanted to buy oil, which was needed, right? For fuel, for transportation, for the trucks to bring food to the supermarket, to heat your home, to heat your industrial industry, right? To work, you needed fuel. And the only way to buy it was you had to transport or cash, use your currency for the dollar. You had to exchange your currency for the dollar, thus the petrodollar. Okay, so we forced the earth, the world, global elites, right, through the central banks to get dollars, creating a supply and demand issue, which that demanded a lot of dollars. And when something demands a lot of something, what happens? It creates a value. So the value went up. Okay, so that we did that in 1974. But unfortunately, what happened was that in 2024, Saudi Arabia, which was one of the major factors that were demanding exchange of other nations' currency to the petrodollar, to the dollar, joined BRICS. Now you may ask why they did that. Well, they have to look out for their best interest. They didn't like also how we were controlling negative sanctions and monopoly around the world. Okay, so they joined BRICS. And if you don't know what BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. All right, and since China is a huge country, right, with over 1.4 billion people, their consumption of oil was very high and very demanding, which is why they invested in Venezuela, who's not part of the Swiss system, and it's not part of the Federal Reserve Bank, or IMF, and World Banks. Therefore, we put negative sanctions on Venezuela, just like we did with Cuba, just like we did with Iran, and finally, many other countries, Syria, Libya, Iraq, many countries. And the last one, we did it to a superpower, which was Russia, in which Russia, when they buy our goods, they have like this account, if you will. Think about it like a bank account. It's called a SWIFT account, in which they had $300 billion there, and America froze their account, their asset. As a matter of fact, they were giving it back to Ukraine to fight against Russia, which I'm not going to get into right now. But the point is, if you follow me and you understand what's going on, these systems saw how we, through negative sanctions, were making and robbing many nations and making them poor through the dollar, through fractional lending, and many other stuff, which I indicated in other videos in detail that you can listen and watch so you can understand more. So as I said before regarding the CEO, you see how much it has changed, okay? And one of the powerful people here in America happens to be Latinos. Latinos' GDP from 1950 to 2025 has gone over $5 trillion. Now, I personally feel that that is a threat through the white supremacists, okay? Especially to a group, all right? A group that are Zionist, okay? Because they own the media. They control the media. They own Fox. They own CNN. This is factual. You can verify this. So they give us contrarian views, right? So we are here bickering, fighting among each other because they are manipulating us. It's a psyop. They've done it throughout the world, okay, through Mossad, even the CIA. We have invaded many other Latino countries, right? Venezuela, Cuba, El Salvador, many other countries we have invaded. And what we do is we put people in place, in power. Sometimes we remove democratic elected officials to put people in power that represent our interests, where people could work for free, poverty, so we could sell products from them that we get, the companies, when we talking about corporate elites, for a lot cheaper, thus they profit, okay? So this America, when you think you're supporting America, you're not really supporting America. You're supporting corporate elites that run America, and they have you misled to control us. Now, this is why when I saw that we started implementing the Enemy Alien Act, I knew that a lot of times when it happened throughout history, we did it before with Germany, we did it with the Japanese, and I don't know if you know this, we did it back in 1929, okay, where we got rid of over 1.6 million Mexicans, where more than 65% were American citizens. Never mind that we stole their land back in 1800, 18 something, 60 something. But I want you to understand that Mexican are Native Americans, okay? The majority of them are, all right? So we stole 55%. What America you see today, 55%, we stole it, and then under the rest, we pressure a general and the government to sign over these lands, like Louisiana, California, Texas, and we have them sign it, but it was under duress, so therefore it was null and void. But we needed a price, so we gave them X amount of money to make it seem as we purchased, because even back then it was illegal. Okay, so through that we have done genocide, we have done a lot. But the point is, what I'm trying to get into is that when we got rid of these Mexicans back in 1929 to 1930s, you notice that we had the Great Depression. So it wasn't just that, but that was one of the factors. So when you see history repeating itself, and when we start saying, oh, you got to go after a dictator, you got to ask yourself why. What we going to steal? What resources are we going to steal? Okay, because these corporations have gone throughout the world, and instead of negotiating with them to creating a fair trade, no, they want to control. Which is why I know that we are in danger. If you look at the GDP, okay, you will see that the United States GDP, and with the G7, if you don't know what the G7 is, those are like Canada, Japan, and a couple of European countries. So they have surpassed, BRICS has surpassed America and Europe, and G7 combined. So that becomes a threat. So as I mentioned before, countries that were forced to buy the dollar and get the dollar and trade in dollars, and sometimes they have to wait a week, right? During that time, that money's going through London or maybe New York, and then we could freeze their account, as we did with Russia. We froze 300 billion for whatever reason we don't like. We put negative sanctions, we freeze them, and that's why by us doing that, we are allowed to put a stranglehold in these nations like Cuba, and by not allowing them to buy products or sell what the nation produces, then obviously they go through poverty, just like what we do in Iran. And we do that to force people to revolt and remove their regime, so we could put a regime in place that will benefit us. Okay, so you may think, as an American patriot, you may think, oh, wow, that's great, but it's not great when millions of people are dying. And we've been doing this throughout Middle East. Look what happened in Iraq, over 1.5 million. So it's always because the dollar is in threat. So the system was created called BRICS, in which these nations got together because they started doubting now America, and they used to give us loan. So right now we are above our GDP. We are 123% above GDP. And that's not even talking about the fact that these loans that we have, I was going to recast, or these bonds are going to recast. So our debt and our interest that we're going to pay is going to be that much higher. So that being said, we want to force these nations basically to use our dollar. And this nation at the time didn't have no other alternative until now. There's a BRIC system, which again is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, along with other nations that have joined them, like Iran, Indonesia, okay, Venezuela. So this is why I know when we start attacking one nation, it's not about democracy, it's not about dictatorship, because obviously if it was about saving people, as I said before, we will be freeing Palestine. We will be not sending billions of dollars to kill innocent children and sending billions of dollars of weapons. And Trump wanted to build a tower right there in Gaza. So don't be naive, people. You guys need to wake up. This is about a group of people that own and control this nation. And it's a fact. You've seen it. Our both political parties, Republicans and Democrats, more than 92% are being paid for by AIPAC and Israel special interest group, in which to pass law that benefits Israel instead of benefiting the best interests of Americans. And why Israel? Because there's a lot of companies that they have right here in America that produce money, including in military. So obviously every war where they bomb something, for example, they use a missile, it's $1 million, boom, they just made $1 million. But guess who pays for it? You do, as your taxpayer. Now you think you're not paying for it, but this is why, as I mentioned before, as you saw the price increase as far as your purchasing power, right? You are not allowed to buy a home. You can't afford it, or you can't afford groceries. The utility becomes very expensive. And the problem is, as you saw the trend going up, the issue now is that it's growing exponentially. So it's going to get a lot worse a lot quicker. So that being said, the issue with Iran basically is that Iran also, because it produces oil, and we put negative sanctions on them, and they're not part of the Rothschild system, right? Then what happens is that other countries that we have sanctions, like Cuba, for example, they're able to purchase oil from them without the dollar. Thus, we lose control. These people lose control, and they don't want that. On top of that, because again, the dollar is worth by how many demand is for it, because it's a legal Ponzi scheme, then when people stop dropping the dollar, what happens is it loses power, and those dollars return back here to America, creating a hyperinflation. So let's continue. So if you understand de-dollarization, as I stated before, our GDP is about, what was it, 20 something, 26 trillion, okay, versus our debt is 38.4 trillion. Here's a chart. Look at the chart. So I'm gonna start mumbling here, right? You can see, put it up here. Now, if you can see, there you go. If you notice the trend of our debt is curving up. It's not keeping up with population, and it's not keeping up with our GDP, okay, gross domestic product, what we produce and sell to other nations. On top of that, if you notice, many countries are not buying more products from, for example, China. So because of that, that means that the demand and the GDP eventually going to start dropping, and especially now that people are not forced, or companies, or I should say really countries and nations are not forced to use the dollar. They could use the BRIC system. That becomes a threat to us. And this nation, the people that own the dollar, do not want to allow that. And they will create World War III if they have to, because that's what's going on. A lot of nations are joining and dropping the dollar and joining BRICS. Okay, they created a system where their currency, the digital currency, is valued for 40% by gold and 60% by 5 nations, the 5 main members, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, in their baskets of goods. That way, one nation cannot get more powerful than the other one, or balanced. So everything is balanced. It's controlled by artificial intelligence. It's been already proven. So all these nations, especially in Latin America, guys, are joining BRICS. Why? They're tired of the negative sanctions. They're tired of how we portray them, us bombing them, and all the things we've done and robbed their natural resources. So they are joining BRICS, especially China, because China obviously deals more and negotiates better. They don't do it under power and war. They do it under, for example, they'll go and build your roads. They'll go and build your infrastructure so you can make more money, so you're both profiting, right? So you're both is a win-win. That's not what we do here in America. So the fact of the matter is, if you saw, is our debt has exceeded what we produce. And the only reason we are operational is because the amount of money we borrowed. How we borrow money? Well, we sell what is called these treasury bonds that a lot of these nations actually buy, and then they mature and it comes back. But the problem has happened that because of what we've done, I want to show you this chart right here. Many of the nations that used to buy our treasury bonds, in other words, used to give us a loan, they are returning the dollar back. So if you notice here, like one of the biggest one is China. At the highest peak, they were 1.316. Obviously, this is as of October, because they haven't even updated, because they don't want you to know the fact. It has gone down to more than 688 billions from the top 1.316 trillion. Same thing with Japan. It has gone down. Brazil has gone down. So look at the numbers up here. Saudi Arabia has gone down. India, South Africa. So in other words, they're not going to give us a loan. And if you recall from another video I mentioned, right, if you're getting paid $1,000 a month, right, but your bills are $1,200 a month, and you're borrowing that $200 difference, right, it comes to a point in a time where the bank notices that you are overextended and over leveraged in debt, and they're not going to lend you money. So these nations are seeing that we are overextended in debt, and they scared. One, because we're not to be trusted. We steal people's money, straight up, just like we did to Russia, right? What we did, we froze $300 billion of their account and took it. So people that used to buy our treasury bonds, they don't want to take the same chance where we're going to look at them wrong for whatever reason and freeze their account, right? Another thing is, we've done this before. We did it with Iran, and this is why I laugh a lot of times with my own Republicans, because I remember when they were saying, oh, Obama gave them back our 1-point-something billion. No, they didn't give them nothing. We stole that, okay? We took it, and by law, we had to return it. And people are naive to the fact. And by the way, I'm a constitutional Republican, but I'm trying to educate so you can see what's going on. So look at these welder peaks and high. So what I'm trying to give you guys, why I know, again, that a war is coming, and I'm sorry, because obviously, instead of us working together with other nations, we want to demand them to use our dollar. We want to steal their oil, as what we did, and we jump again in Venezuela, which I don't think that's That's not over with. They're fighting, by the way. The media is lying to you, again, because the media is controlled by these Zionist elites, and it's to their best interest to lie to you. Okay? And if you doubt me, you need to read all these articles that I've written before, because it's a lot worse than you think. Okay? What's going on with ICE, what's going on with America, wake up. It's not Republicans or Democrats. It's this group, this elite Zionist group, okay? These elite, powerful groups, because they're not just Zionists, okay? That they are running America, these companies, for their best interest. So they don't care about you, the small man. They don't care about people dying. They'll hide in bunkers and have us die in World War III. You have to, but they don't want to lose that power to that dollar. And that's what's really going on. And if you think that because we have a strong military, that's enough, tell me something. How would a military fight when they're not getting paid? Because the economy is going to crash. We can't afford it. And if all these nations keep dropping the dollar, obviously it's going to create a red flag to the point. If you understand anything about stock markets, what happens when you see a huge company sell millions of shares, right? The value goes down, and a lot of people start, wait a minute, let me sell my share, because if not, it's going to keep dropping, and I'm going to get less of money. So it's like hot potato, who's going to get burned? So they'll start dropping the dollar because they don't want to get burned. On top of the fact that the world is against us. They upset. They see, like I told you, there's consequences to our action. They see how we are violating, creating crimes, right? War crimes, violating institutional law. We think we definitely cannot fight with the world entirely. And obviously we cannot fight with China and Russia. And if you think we can, you're very naive. Because China, the fact that they have 1.4 billion people, they could easily mass produce bombs. They're very technological, very smart. And we cannot compete with that. Okay? So, another thing I want you to understand about military. China right now, remember when we put those tariffs? Okay? Well, this is a trade war. There's a trade war going on, tariff trade war. So another thing that we need in order to have these bombs, these ships, and all these technology that we need to fight a war, like gallium, China is no longer sending it to us. Okay? They produce about 750, 760 metric ton in 2024. Germanium for optics, for fiber optics, semiconductors. China also froze that for us. Antimony, that's munition for flame retardants, alloys, self-defense user. They produce over, in 2024, 80,000 tons. They're not giving us that. So in other words, we're fighting with people that lend us money, that all they have to do, honestly, is stop giving us money and stop selling us these products that we need, and our economy is going to crash. It's going to collapse. So therefore, this is why I believe there's going to be, besides that I saw it on a vision and I wrote about it, I'm being honest, there's going to be a major war. Okay, and the reason for that is because the people that own the dollar, again, they don't want to lose control of this monopoly they have around the world. Okay, they want all the nations, as you make sure you might have heard religiously, one world government, and it's not going to work in their favor. And it's for sure it's not going to work in our favor, because if that really happens, then you're going to have to accept that mark of the beast that you heard about, where you cannot buy or sell. So the reason I believe that sometimes people have these gifts to see the future and prophets and all that is to let you know, warn you, and hopefully bring a change. Because if not, what's the point? What's the point of me knowing that we're going to attack Iran, and Iran is it's going to bomb the hell out of Israel, right? And we're going to, USA is going to be embarrassed if I can't stop it, right? And maybe I can't, but at least I'm warning you. Because one thing I could tell you is that if you want change, you need to realize this has nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. The media is owned by these people. They're giving us contrarian views to distract you and not fight against this elite that are running America, that took over our country. And ask yourself, and I'm sorry to say this, because it's a group of people. Okay? You cannot put all the Jews in one, because a lot of good Jews, honestly, but they are acting as if Jews. And those that believe in the scriptures, right? Revelations chapter 3, verse 9 speaks about the synagogues of Satan. Those that say they are Jews and are not. And they are controlling the world. I'm sorry. They're controlling the world, and they're losing power. They are like, some of them, because not all, but they're like parasites, acting as they are Jews and they are not. And they are in different nations, right? And they control the economy. They control certain things, and they get us fighting not just against white and black, not just against Republicans and Democrats, but Jews against Christians, Christians against Muslims. And that's what they're doing, because that's how they divide you to control that power. Okay? Has nothing to do with religion. It's been going on through history. Obviously, they need people to fight their wars, and they need representatives like Israel. They need people. So they have manipulated the world, and this is why you see, okay, what's going on, and it has happened throughout history, over 109 countries. So ask yourself, when someone gets kicked out of 109 countries, when they say that they're killing babies and sacrificing all that, and people say, oh, that's blood libel. That's what they're saying now. But look into that, because what's going on? What's going on? How many people have gotten caught transporting kids and killing kids and all? It's a fact. Look at who are the main owners. Who's the main owner of BlackRock? You know how powerful BlackRock is, Vanguard, and all these companies right here in America? Who are the owners? And people say, oh, it's a public company. Who are the owners? Who's the board of directors? You got to look at all that, right? Because all these companies, Boeing, there's many, and I've written about them. But the fact of the matter is, it's to their best interest to be in perpetual war, because they rack up on billions of dollars while you rack up the debt and the blood for dying for them. You're not dying for America. You're dying for corporations. You're dying for Enron. You're dying for Halliburton. You're dying for Lockheed. You're dying for BlackRock. That's who you're really dying for. And unfortunately, it is tough because they own many companies. From Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, you name it, it's all owned. So what do you do? What do you do? One thing I tell you, though, you can do: term limits, no dual citizenship, remove these lobbyists from power. There's a lot of stuff, and I've written about it because that's the only way, hopefully, we will get regained in control of this nation. But I honestly believe that we may be too late. I hope not, because I want to get married. I want to sell real estate. I got to stay optimistic. I got to remain with hope and with faith. But as you saw, they're competing with currency. And I assure you that China and Russia is not going to allow us to overtake Iran in oil, right? Because then that affects their currency that they just created, the BRICS bridge and the unit that I told you how it stands by, okay? So most nations, because again, essentially they're going to leave us, they're going to join them, and unless we force them, we can't keep doing that, because eventually the world will rebel, and that's what's going on, guys. And unfortunately, we at the end of the stick, because we live here, and we're going to go through that. Please like, comment, and share. I want to hear your response. Take care.